February 8th, 2002, Salt Lake City, Utah. The world's eyes are on the Winter Olympics. Thousands of athletes from around the globe have gathered to compete for the ultimate prize, Olympic glory. Among them is a 19-year-old Canadian snowboarder named Ryan James Wedding. Born in Thunder Bay, Ontario, he's about to represent his country on the biggest stage of his life. But let me take you back. Long before Ryan Wedding became one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives, before he earned the aliases El Jefe, Giant, and Public Enemy, before he ordered murders and trafficked metric tons of cocaine, he was just a kid with a dream. Thunder Bay, population just over 100,000. Nestled on the northwestern shore of Lake Superior, it's a working-class city where winter lasts 8 months of the year. For a young boy growing up here in the 1980s, there weren't many paths to escape the cold or the monotony. Hockey was king, as it is in most Canadian towns. But Ryan Wedding found something different. He found snowboarding. Now you have to understand, snowboarding in the early 1990s wasn't what it is today. It was new, it was rebellious, it was the sport of outcasts and adrenaline junkies. While other kids were playing organized hockey under the watchful eyes of overbearing parents, snowboarders were carving their own paths, literally and figuratively. Ryan Wedding took to it naturally. He was tall, eventually growing to 6 feet 1 inch, strong and fearless. By his teenage years, he wasn't just good, he was competition-level good. Training for the Olympics isn't romantic, it's brutal. It's waking up before dawn, driving hours to hills that aren't quite steep enough, aren't quite challenging enough. It's bruised ribs and twisted ankles. It's wondering if you're wasting your youth chasing a dream that statistically almost never comes true. But for Ryan, the dream was coming true. In 2001, Ryan Wedding qualified for the Canadian Olympic team. He would compete in the giant slalom, a high-speed event where riders navigate through a series of gates on a steep mountain course. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and your Olympic dream is over. For a kid from Thunder Bay, this was everything. This was the validation that all those early mornings, all those injuries, all that sacrifice, it meant something. February 2002, Ryan Wedding, just 19 years old, stands at the top of the giant slalom course in Park City, Utah. Thousands of spectators, millions watching on television worldwide. This is his moment. The results? Ryan finished 24th. Not a medal, not even close to the podium, but he was an Olympian. That title alone opens doors. It commands respect. It's supposed to set you up for a successful life in sports media, coaching, sponsorships, speaking engagements. For most Olympic athletes who don't medal, this is where the story pivots from competitive athlete to brand ambassador, to corporate spokesperson, to coach. A dignified retirement from competitive sports and entry into a comfortable middle-class existence trading on Olympic glory. But Ryan Wedding's story doesn't go that way. Not even close. Here's where Ryan Wedding's story goes dark. And I mean that literally. We don't know much about what happened in the years immediately following the Olympics. What we do know is that Ryan didn't pursue the typical Olympic athlete's path. No coaching, no sponsorships, no motivational speaking tours. Instead, somewhere between 2002 and 2010, Ryan Wedding disappeared from public life. He fell off the radar. His family back in Thunder Bay lost contact. Friends from his snowboarding days stopped hearing from him. Now, let's be clear about something. The FBI and federal prosecutors have built a case against Ryan Wedding that spans over a decade. But the exact moment when an Olympic athlete transforms into an international drug trafficker, that's the mystery at the heart of this story. What we can piece together from court documents, FBI investigations, and witness testimony is this. By the early 2010s, Ryan Wedding was no longer just a former Olympian. He had become something else entirely. El Jefe, Spanish for the boss. That's what they started calling him. And then there was Giant, a reference not just to his 6'1" frame, but to the scale of his operation. And later, Public Enemy, a name that would prove prophetic. According to federal prosecutors, Ryan Wedding began building a drug trafficking empire that would eventually span 3 countries: Colombia, Mexico, the United States, and Canada. This wasn't small-time dealing. This wasn't even large-scale street distribution. This was transnational organized crime at the highest level. The FBI alleges that Wedding's organization moved cocaine, not in pounds or even hundreds of pounds, but in metric tons. According to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, Wedding's operation trafficked 60 metric tons of cocaine per year. To put that in perspective, that's over 132,000 pounds of cocaine annually. 60 metric tons per year. That makes Ryan Wedding, by federal estimates, the largest distributor of cocaine in Canada. You're probably wondering, how does this happen? How does someone go from representing their country at the Olympic Games to running one of the largest cocaine operations in North America? The truth is, we don't have all the answers, but what we do know about the drug trade can help us understand the transformation. The cocaine trade requires a few key things: connections in source countries, transportation networks, distribution channels, and, crucially, trust. You need people who can move product across international borders without getting caught. You need people who can handle enormous amounts of money. And you need people who are willing to use violence to protect their interests. Ryan Wedding had traveled internationally as an athlete. He understood logistics. He understood how to move through airports, how to blend in, how to appear legitimate. And perhaps most importantly, he had the discipline and the fearlessness that made him an Olympic competitor. But there's something else, something darker. According to the FBI, Ryan Wedding wasn't just a trafficker. He was willing to kill multiple times. The indictments against Ryan Wedding don't just list drug charges, they list murder, multiple murders, and attempted murder. These aren't just allegations of ordering violence from a distance. These are carefully planned, ruthlessly executed killings designed to send a message. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how Ryan Wedding went from moving cocaine to ordering executions, we need to understand how his empire was built. And for that, we need to follow the cocaine.
Major international drug operation and is responsible for several murders. They say his alleged criminal enterprise has been moving hundreds of millions of dollars of cocaine from Mexico into the United States and Canada. And at times, the FBI says he transported through drugs through LA.
Ryan Wedding and his organization use Los Angeles as the primary hub for their narcotics operations. An estimated 60 metric tons of cocaine per year and 5 metric tons of fentanyl per month move through Los Angeles on its way to U.S. and Canadian cities.
The FBI believes Wedding is living in Mexico under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. Anyone with information is being asked to contact the FBI or local law enforcement.
Every kilogram of cocaine that Ryan Wedding allegedly moved began its journey in the jungles of Colombia. Colombia has been the world's largest cocaine producer for decades. Despite years of US-funded drug wars, military operations, and billions of dollars spent on eradication efforts, Colombian cartels continue to produce roughly 70% of the world's cocaine supply. According to federal prosecutors, Ryan Wedding established connections with Colombian cartels, specifically with suppliers who could provide bulk quantities of cocaine. We're talking hundreds of kilograms at a time. The indictment doesn't specify exactly which cartel or cartels Wedding worked with, but the scale of his operation suggests high-level connections. Now, getting cocaine out of Colombia is one thing. Getting it into the United States and Canada is another challenge entirely. This is where Mexico enters the story, and specifically, this is where the Sinaloa cartel enters the story. The Sinaloa cartel, once led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, is one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. Even after El Chapo's capture and imprisonment, the Sinaloa cartel continues to control major smuggling routes from Mexico into the United States. According to the FBI, Ryan Wedding's operation transported cocaine from Colombia to Mexico, where it entered the Sinaloa cartel's distribution network. From there, the cocaine moved north. The route was sophisticated. Colombian cocaine would arrive in Mexico, likely by boat or small aircraft to remote landing strips. Mexican cartel associates would then transport the cocaine to stash houses near the U.S. border. From there, Wedding's organization would coordinate smuggling operations across the California border. Los Angeles, the City of Angels, population nearly 4 million. It's America's second largest city, a sprawling megalopolis where it's easy to disappear, easy to blend in, and for a drug trafficking organization, easy to hide enormous quantities of cocaine. According to court documents, Ryan Wedding's organization operated multiple stash houses in the Los Angeles area. These weren't run-down crack houses. These were legitimate-looking properties where hundreds of kilograms of cocaine were stored before being shipped north. But here's what makes Wedding's operation particularly sophisticated. He wasn't trying to distribute cocaine in Los Angeles. Los Angeles was just a waypoint. The real money, the real market, was further north, in Canada. Canada, Ryan Wedding's homeland, and according to prosecutors, his primary market. Here's something most people don't realize. Cocaine prices vary dramatically depending on where you sell it. In Colombia, a kilogram of cocaine might sell for $2,000 to $4,000. By the time that same kilogram reaches Mexico, it's worth $10,000 to $15,000. In Los Angeles, that kilogram is worth $25,000 to $30,000. But in Canada, that same kilogram can sell for $40,000 to $60,000 or more. Those price differences add up fast when you're moving metric tons. According to the indictment, Wedding's organization worked with a Canada-based drug transportation network run by two men, Hardeep Rott, 46, of Ontario, and Gurpreet Singh, 31, also of Ontario. Their job was to receive the cocaine shipments from California and distribute them throughout Canada. The operation was remarkably efficient. Federal prosecutors allege that from January 2024 to August 2024 alone, just 8 months, Wedding's organization shipped hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Southern California to Canada. Let's do some math. If Ryan Wedding's organization was moving 60 metric tons per year, and they were selling that cocaine in Canada at an average price of $50,000 per kilogram, we're talking about gross revenues of $3 billion per year. $3 billion. Now, Wedding wouldn't keep all of that. He'd have to pay his Colombian suppliers, his Mexican transporters, his American smugglers, his Canadian distributors. He'd have overhead costs, stash houses, transportation, bribes, legal fees. But even if he only kept 10% of that revenue as profit, we're talking about $300 million per year. But here's the thing about making $300 million per year illegally. It attracts attention. Law enforcement attention, rival cartel attention. And when you're operating at that scale, people get greedy, people make mistakes, people betray you. And when that happens in the drug trade, people die. November 20th, 2023. A cold Monday evening in Ontario, Canada. A family is at home. Just a regular evening. Dinner finished, maybe watching TV, making plans for the week ahead. And then, someone knocks on the door. What happened next, according to federal prosecutors, was a calculated double homicide ordered by Ryan Wedding himself. 2 members of the family were shot and killed. A third family member survived but suffered serious physical injuries that would change their life forever. Why were they targeted? According to the indictment, it was retaliation. A drug shipment had been stolen, cocaine that had passed through Southern California on its way to Canada. Wedding believed this family was responsible. He ordered their execution as a message. In the drug trade, stolen shipments aren't just financial losses, they're challenges to authority. If you let someone steal from you without retaliating, you look weak. And in an industry where violence is the only enforcement mechanism, looking weak is a death sentence. Ryan Wedding, according to prosecutors, understood this, and so he allegedly ordered his second-in-command, a man named Andrew Clark, to handle the situation. Clark was Wedding's enforcer, his head of security, his executioner. Andrew Clark, age 35 at the time of his arrest, born in Canada, lived in Mexico. According to the superseding indictment filed in September 2024, Clark was charged alongside Wedding for the murders and for running the cocaine trafficking organization. But unlike Wedding, Clark was eventually captured. Mexican authorities arrested him in October 2024, and he was extradited to the United States. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges. 6 months after the Ontario murders, Ryan Wedding allegedly ordered another killing. This time, the victim owed a drug debt. The specifics aren't public: how much was owed, why the victim couldn't or wouldn't pay. All we know from court documents is that on May 18, 2024, Ryan Wedding ordered this person's execution, and someone carried it out. But perhaps the most revealing murder allegation comes from April 1, 2024. Another victim in Ontario, Canada. According to the indictment, this killing was carried out by Andrew Clark and another man, Malik Damian Cunningham, a 23-year-old dual Canadian-American citizen. Why is this murder revealing? Because by April 2024, law enforcement was already investigating Ryan Wedding. The FBI had his organization under surveillance. They were building their case. And yet, the murders continued. That's the thing about violence in the drug trade. Once you start, it's almost impossible to stop. Every murder creates witnesses, creates relatives seeking revenge, creates law enforcement pressure. It's a spiral that almost always ends the same way: arrest, extradition, life in prison, or death. But Ryan Wedding wasn't done, not by a long shot. In January 2025, by which time Wedding was already a fugitive from U.S. justice, a federal witness in the case against him was eating at a restaurant in Medellin, Colombia. This witness had presumably agreed to cooperate with prosecutors to provide testimony that could help convict Wedding and his organization. According to prosecutors, Ryan Wedding put a bounty on this witness's head. He believed that if the witness was killed, the charges against him might be dismissed, that he might avoid extradition to the United States. Someone walked into that restaurant in Medellin and shot the witness to death. Let that sink in for a moment. Ryan Wedding, a former Olympic athlete, someone who once represented the ideals of sportsmanship and national pride, allegedly ordered the assassination of a federal witness in a foreign country. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a bar fight gone wrong. This was premeditated murder designed to obstruct justice. As First Assistant U.S. Attorney Bill Essaili put it, Wedding placed a bounty on the victim's head in the erroneous belief that the victim's death would result in the dismissal of criminal charges against him and his international drug trafficking ring, and would further ensure he was not extradited to the United States. He was wrong. By the time we reach 2025, Ryan Wedding faces multiple indictments in federal court in Los Angeles. The charges include conspiracy to distribute cocaine, conspiracy to export cocaine, conspiracy to import cocaine, possession with intent to distribute cocaine, money laundering, murder in furtherance of a drug trafficking conspiracy, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. These aren't minor charges. These are the kinds of charges that carry mandatory life sentences without the possibility of parole. But to face those charges, to stand trial, Ryan Wedding would need to be arrested. And that's where our story takes another turn. Because Ryan Wedding is still a fugitive, still on the run, still, as far as the FBI knows, being protected by the Sinaloa cartel somewhere in Mexico. The FBI's investigation into Ryan Wedding didn't happen overnight. According to officials, the operation, aptly codenamed Operation Giant Slalom after Wedding's Olympic event, had been underway for years. The lead agency was the FBI's Los Angeles field office, but this wasn't just a local investigation. It involved multiple federal agencies: the Drug Enforcement Administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. It involved international cooperation with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Mexican authorities. Why such a massive investigation? Because Ryan Wedding's organization wasn't just a California problem or a Canadian problem. It was a transnational threat. Modern drug trafficking investigations use every tool available: wiretaps, undercover operations, financial analysis, surveillance, and, increasingly important, cooperation from witnesses and co-defendants who agree to flip. According to court documents, the FBI had been wiretapping phones associated with Wedding's organization. They had conducted physical surveillance of stash houses. They had traced financial transactions. They had built a comprehensive picture of how the organization operated, who worked for it, and how it moved cocaine from Colombia to Canada. But having evidence of crimes and actually arresting the people committing those crimes are two different things, especially when the primary target is living under the protection of one of the world's most powerful drug cartels in a country where American law enforcement has no direct jurisdiction. In June 2024, a federal grand jury in Los Angeles returned indictments against Ryan Wedding and his second-in-command, Andrew Clark. The indictments laid out the scope of the cocaine trafficking operation and included murder charges. But the indictments were just the beginning. The FBI still needed to find Wedding and bring him to justice. 3 months later, in September 2024, federal prosecutors filed a superseding indictment. This new indictment added 14 additional defendants and expanded the charges against Wedding and Clark to include attempted murder. Among those 14 new defendants were the Canadian Transportation Network operators, Hardeep Rott and Gurpreet Singh, both of Ontario. Also indicted was Malik Damian Cunningham, charged with murder alongside Andrew Clark. The superseding indictment revealed new details about the operation's scope. It specified that from January 2024 to August 2024, just 8 months, Wedding's organization had shipped hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Southern California to Canada through the Rott and Singh transportation network. By this point, law enforcement had arrested several members of the organization. Andrew Clark was arrested in Mexico in October 2024. By December 2024, Attorney General Pamela Bondi announced that Clark was among 29 fugitives who had been extradited from Mexico to face charges in the United States. But Ryan Wedding remained at large. On November 19, 2024, FBI Director Kash Patel held a press conference in Los Angeles. Joining him were representatives from multiple agencies: the U.S. State Department, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. The announcement was significant. FBI Director Patel didn't mince words. He said, "Make no mistake about it, Ryan Wedding is a modern-day iteration of Pablo Escobar. He's a modern-day iteration of El Chapo Guzman." That's not hyperbole. That's not media sensationalism. That's the director of the FBI directly comparing a former Olympic snowboarder to two of the most notorious drug lords in history. And then came the big announcement. On March 7, 2025, the FBI officially added Ryan James Wedding to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list. This is one of the most famous lists in American law enforcement. Created in 1950, it has featured some of the most dangerous criminals in U.S. history. As of July 2025, 537 people have been added to the list. Of those, 598 have been captured or located, a success rate of 93%. Ryan Wedding became the 535th person added to this notorious list. He would replace Alexis Flores, who was wanted by the FBI's Philadelphia office. But here's what makes Wedding's addition to the list particularly noteworthy: the reward for his capture. The FBI announced it was offering $50,000 for information leading to Wedding's apprehension, arrest, and extradition. But that wasn't all. The U.S. State Department, under Secretary Marco Rubio, announced an additional reward of up to $10 million under the Narcotics Rewards Program. This reward offering was being jointly supported by the Canadian and Mexican governments as part of a unified effort to bring Wedding to justice. $10 million. That's among the highest rewards ever offered for a fugitive. It signals that Ryan Wedding is considered one of the most dangerous and important targets in international drug enforcement. As I record this documentary in January 2026, Ryan James Wedding remains a fugitive from justice. He has not been captured, he has not surrendered, and according to the FBI, he's still out there. But where? According to federal authorities, Ryan Wedding is believed to be in Mexico, likely somewhere under the protection of the Sinaloa cartel. But Mexico is a large country, almost 762,000 square miles, with a population of over 126 million people. Finding one man, especially one with cartel protection and significant financial resources, is like finding a needle in a haystack. The Sinaloa cartel has a long history of protecting high-value associates from law enforcement. They have safe houses, corrupt officials on their payroll, and extensive intelligence networks. If the cartel wants to keep Ryan Wedding hidden, they have the means to do so. You might be wondering, with all the resources of the FBI, the DEA, international law enforcement, and a $10 million reward, how has Ryan Wedding evaded capture? The answer is complicated. First, he has money, lots of money. When you've been trafficking metric tons of cocaine for years, you can afford the best protection money can buy. Private security, forged documents, multiple safe houses, plastic surgery if necessary. Second, he has connections. The Sinaloa cartel isn't just protecting him out of goodwill. Wedding's operation was moving enormous quantities of their cocaine to Canada. He represents a valuable asset. Losing him would disrupt a multi-million-dollar distribution network. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Wedding understands operational security. Remember, this is a man who successfully ran a transnational drug trafficking organization for years before being indicted. He knows how to stay off the grid. He knows how to avoid electronic surveillance. He knows how to communicate covertly. According to the indictment, Wedding has used multiple aliases: El Jefe, Giant, Public Enemy, James Conrad King, and Jesse King. He likely has forged identity documents for each of these names. He could be traveling under any of them. It's worth noting that Ryan Wedding isn't the only member of his organization still at large. Several co-defendants named in the indictments have not been arrested. Some may still be operating parts of the trafficking network. Others may have fled to countries without extradition treaties with the United States. But Wedding remains the primary target. He's the one on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. He's the one with a $10 million bounty on his head. He's the one that federal authorities compare to Pablo Escobar and El Chapo. Because, make no mistake, Ryan Wedding will be caught. It's not a question of if, but when. The FBI's 10 most wanted list has a 93% capture rate. Most fugitives on the list are captured within months or a few years. The longest anyone stayed on the list was Victor Manuel Herrera, who was listed for 32 years before being removed in 2016. But Wedding doesn't have 32 years. The heat is too intense. The reward is too high. Someone in his organization will eventually betray him, or he'll make a mistake, or Mexican authorities, under pressure from the US government, will decide his protection isn't worth the diplomatic headaches. When, not if, Ryan Wedding is captured and extradited to the United States, he'll face trial in federal court in the Central District of California. He'll be prosecuted by some of the most experienced drug trafficking prosecutors in the country. He'll face evidence from wiretaps, surveillance, financial records, and likely testimony from cooperating co-defendants. And if convicted, he'll face mandatory life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The murder charges alone carry that sentence. Add in the drug trafficking conspiracy charges, the money laundering, the obstruction of justice, and there's virtually no scenario where Ryan Wedding ever sees freedom again. Unless, of course, he dies first, either by law enforcement action during his arrest or by cartel violence if he's no longer useful to his protectors. The Ryan Wedding case isn't just the story of one man's spectacular fall from grace. It's a window into the modern drug trade, the challenges of international law enforcement, and the corrupting power of the cocaine industry. So what can we learn from this case? First, the drug trade has evolved. The stereotypical image of drug dealers as street corner thugs is wildly outdated. Modern drug trafficking is a sophisticated international business that requires logistics expertise, financial acumen, and global connections. Ryan Wedding allegedly ran an operation that moved cocaine across 3 countries, coordinated with multiple trafficking organizations, laundered millions of dollars, and operated for years before being detected. This isn't the work of a common criminal. This is organized crime at the corporate level. Second, the case highlights how drug traffickers exploit international borders. Moving cocaine from Colombia to Canada requires crossing multiple jurisdictions, each with its own law enforcement agencies and legal systems. Traffickers exploit these gaps, using sophisticated smuggling techniques and corrupt officials to move product. The fact that Ryan Wedding's organization allegedly stored cocaine in Los Angeles but sold it in Canada is revealing. They weren't trying to compete with established distribution networks in LA. They were using California as a transshipment point to access higher-priced Canadian markets. Third, the case demonstrates that violence in the drug trade is inevitable. When you're dealing with an illegal industry worth billions of dollars, where contracts can't be enforced through legal means, violence becomes the only enforcement mechanism. Ryan Wedding allegedly ordered multiple murders, not because he was inherently evil or sadistic, but because in his world, violence was necessary to maintain control, to retaliate against theft, to eliminate witnesses, to send messages. This is why drug legalization advocates argue that prohibition creates violence. When there's no legal framework for resolving disputes, people turn to guns. Fourth, and perhaps most personally relevant, this case shatters the myth that Olympic athletes are somehow immune to criminal behavior. We want to believe that people who represent our countries, who embody sportsmanship and discipline, are morally superior, but they're just people, and people are capable of making terrible decisions. Ryan Wedding's Olympic past makes his alleged crimes more shocking, but it doesn't make them unique. There have been other athletes who've committed serious crimes. The Olympic rings don't grant moral immunity. Fifth, the case demonstrates both the importance and the limitations of international law enforcement cooperation. Operation Giant Slalom involved agencies from the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It required sharing intelligence, coordinating investigations, and navigating complex extradition laws. The fact that several co-defendants have been arrested while Ryan Wedding remains a fugitive shows both the successes and the challenges of this cooperation. Some countries are more willing and able to cooperate than others, and when a fugitive has cartel protection, even the best international cooperation can hit walls. And finally, this case is a stark reminder of the human cost of the cocaine trade. It's easy to get caught up in the drama of the story, the Olympic athlete turned drug lord, the international manhunt, the massive quantities of drugs and money. But behind those statistics are real victims. The 2 people murdered in Ontario on November 20th, 2023, they were someone's family members. They had lives, dreams, futures that were stolen from them. The witness assassinated in Medellin in January 2025, they made the courageous decision to cooperate with law enforcement, and they paid for it with their life. And beyond the direct victims of violence, there are the countless people whose lives have been destroyed by cocaine addiction. The 60 metric tons per year that Wedding's organization allegedly trafficked wasn't just an abstract number. That cocaine ended up in the hands of users, many of whom struggled with addiction, overdose, and the devastating social consequences of drug abuse. Every kilogram of cocaine represents shattered families, lost jobs, broken relationships, and lives cut short. Let's return to where we started. February 2002. A 19-year-old Ryan Wedding standing at the top of an Olympic giant slalom course, about to compete on the world's biggest sporting stage. What was going through his mind at that moment? Was he thinking about all the sacrifices he'd made to get there? Was he nervous about the competition? Was he imagining the life that would follow if he medaled, or even if he didn't? Could he have imagined, even in his darkest thoughts, that 23 years later he would be one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives? That he would be accused of trafficking metric tons of cocaine? That he would be charged with multiple murders? That there would be a $10 million bounty on his head? I doubt it. I think Ryan Wedding, like most Olympic athletes, was focused on that singular moment, the race, the achievement, the glory. Beat. So what happened? What changed? Psychologists who study criminal behavior talk about something called moral disengagement, the process by which people convince themselves that immoral behavior is acceptable or necessary. It happens gradually. It starts with small rationalizations and builds over time. Maybe Ryan Wedding's moral disengagement started after the Olympics. Maybe he struggled financially. Maybe he felt that society owed him something for his Olympic achievement, and he wasn't getting it. Maybe he met the wrong people at the wrong time. Or maybe, and this is the most uncomfortable possibility, maybe Ryan Wedding was always capable of this. Maybe the Olympic athlete and the alleged drug lord aren't two different people, but rather two manifestations of the same personality. Someone driven, ambitious, willing to do whatever it takes to win. There's a reason this story has captured public attention. It's not just the sensational details, the Olympic connection, the cartel involvement, the millions of dollars. It's the fundamental betrayal of what we believe Olympic athletes should represent. The Olympics are supposed to be about more than just sports. They're about international cooperation, peaceful competition, and the pursuit of excellence. Olympic athletes are supposed to be role models, people who inspire the next generation. Ryan Wedding's alleged crimes are a betrayal of all of that. He took the platform, the credibility, and the connections he gained from being an Olympian and allegedly used them to build a criminal empire. But here's what's important. Ryan Wedding is not typical of Olympic athletes. The overwhelming majority of Olympians go on to live respectable lives, whether in sports, business, education, or public service. They take the discipline, work ethic, and resilience they developed as athletes and apply it to positive pursuits. Ryan Wedding is the exception, not the rule. And that's exactly what makes his story so compelling and so tragic. As this documentary comes to a close, I want to return to the victims, because ultimately, this isn't a story about Ryan Wedding. It's a story about the people whose lives he allegedly destroyed. The two family members murdered in Ontario, the witness assassinated in Medellin, the person killed in April 2024, the countless people whose lives were damaged by the cocaine his organization allegedly trafficked. Beat. These are the people who deserve justice. These are the people who deserve to be remembered. Not Ryan Wedding, not the Olympic athlete turned drug lord, but the ordinary people who were caught in the crossfire of his alleged criminal enterprise. As of January 2026, the hunt for Ryan Wedding continues. The FBI has not given up. The reward remains: $10 million for information leading to his capture. Somewhere, Ryan Wedding is hiding. Maybe he's in a cartel safe house in Sinaloa. Maybe he's moved to a different country. Maybe he's undergone plastic surgery. Maybe he's living under a new identity, constantly looking over his shoulder. But he can't hide forever. Eventually, someone will betray him, or he'll make a mistake, or the pressure will become too much for his cartel protectors. And when that day comes, when Ryan Wedding is finally arrested and brought to justice, it won't erase the damage he's allegedly caused. It won't bring back the murdered victims. It won't undo the years of cocaine trafficking, but it will send a message. No one is above the law, not even an Olympic athlete, not even someone protected by one of the world's most powerful drug cartels. Justice may be slow, but it's relentless. The Ryan wedding case is a modern tragedy. It's the story of wasted potential, of talent corrupted by greed, of an Olympic dream that turned into a nightmare. But it's also a reminder of the work that law enforcement does every day to combat transnational organized crime. The FBI agents, DEA officers, prosecutors, and international partners who spent years building the case against Ryan Wedding and his organization, they're the real heroes of this story. They're fighting an uphill battle against criminal organizations with nearly unlimited resources. They're navigating complex international laws and jurisdictions. They're putting themselves at risk to protect communities from the violence and addiction that the drug trade brings. Beat. And they will not give up until Ryan Wedding faces justice. If you have any information about Ryan Wedding's whereabouts, please contact your local FBI office or the nearest American embassy or consulate. You can also submit tips online at tips.fbi.gov. Remember, there's a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to his capture. That information could save lives. It could bring justice to victims' families. It could help dismantle a criminal organization responsible for trafficking metric tons of cocaine. From Olympic glory to FBI's most wanted, this is the story of Ryan James Wedding, a cautionary tale of ambition, corruption, and the relentless pursuit of justice. This has been a Crime Case Vault documentary. Thank you for watching.
December 2nd, 1993, Medellin, Colombia, a quiet residential neighborhood called Los Olivos. Inside a middle-class house, a man celebrated his 44th birthday with his family, talking on the phone, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy despite being the most wanted criminal in the world. Outside, hundreds of Colombian National Police officers surrounded the building. American DEA agents coordinated the operation. Surveillance teams tracked every movement. This was it. After 16 months of hunting, they'd finally found him. The man inside the house was Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, the king of cocaine, the richest criminal in history. A man who'd built a $30 billion drug empire, killed thousands of people, terrorized an entire nation, and challenged the power of governments across 2 continents. At 2:15 p.m., shots rang out. Pablo Escobar, barefoot and desperate, tried to escape across the rooftops. He didn't make it far. Colombian police bullets struck him down. He fell, bleeding, dying on a clay tile roof under the hot Colombian sun. The most powerful drug lord in history was dead. But his legacy, his violence, and his impact on the world would continue for decades. This is the story of Pablo Escobar, how a poor kid from rural Colombia became the 7th richest man on earth, how he built an empire on cocaine and blood, how he declared war on his own country, and how the combined forces of the Colombian government, the DEA, the FBI, and rival cartels finally brought him down. From the slums of Medellin to the heights of unimaginable wealth and power, this is the rise and fall of the king of cocaine. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born December 1, 1949, in Rionegro, Colombia, a small town near Medellin. He was the third of 7 children born to Abel de Jesus de Escobar, a farmer and later a watchman, and Hermelda de los Dolores Gaviria Barrio, a schoolteacher. The family was poor but not destitute. Hermelda's work as a teacher gave the family some stability and respectability in the community. But Pablo grew up seeing wealth all around him in Medellin, a growing industrial city where fortunes were being made while his family struggled. Young Pablo was intelligent and ambitious. He excelled in school when he applied himself, but he also showed signs of ruthlessness and moral flexibility from an early age. He was fascinated by stories of Colombian bandits and criminals who'd become folk heroes, particularly those who claimed to steal from the rich to help the poor. As a teenager in the 1960s, Pablo began his criminal career with small-time scams and thefts. He sold fake diplomas to students. He stole cars and sold them for parts. He allegedly stole gravestones, sandblasted off the names and resold them. Nothing was too low, too petty, or too dishonest if it made money. By his late teens, Pablo had moved into more serious crime. He became involved in smuggling operations, moving contraband goods across Colombia. He learned the basics of criminal enterprise: how to bribe officials, how to intimidate competitors, how to move illegal goods without getting caught. In the early 1970s, Pablo entered the cocaine business. At the time, cocaine was becoming increasingly popular in the United States, particularly among wealthy Americans who could afford the expensive drug. Colombian traffickers saw an opportunity. Coca grew naturally in South America, and the United States had millions of potential customers willing to pay premium prices. Pablo started small, working as a smuggler for other traffickers, but he quickly realized that the real money wasn't in working for others. It was in controlling the entire supply chain. He began making trips to Peru and Bolivia, where coca paste was produced. He established relationships with producers, arranging to buy large quantities of paste, which he would then have refined into cocaine in hidden labs in Colombia. The next challenge was getting the cocaine to the United States. Pablo was innovative and ruthless in developing smuggling methods. He hid cocaine in airplane tires, in the soles of shoes, in hollowed-out furniture. He paid pilots to fly small planes loaded with cocaine from Colombia to remote airstrips in the United States. He corrupted customs officials, police officers, and politicians at every level. As Pablo's operation grew, he attracted the attention of others in the cocaine trade. Rather than fight competitors, Pablo often partnered with them, forming alliances that would eventually become the Medellin cartel. Key partners included the Ochoa brothers, Jorge Luis, Juan David, and Fabio, as well as Carlos Lader and Jose Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha. The Medellin cartel wasn't a traditional organized crime structure with a clear hierarchy. It was more of a federation of independent traffickers who cooperated on major operations while maintaining their own organizations. But Pablo Escobar quickly emerged as the dominant figure, the one with the most money, the most violence, and the most audacity. By the late 1970s, Pablo was a millionaire. By the early 1980s, he was a billionaire. Money poured in faster than he could count it. At the height of his power, Pablo's organization was spending $2,500 a week just on rubber bands to wrap stacks of cash. He lost approximately 10% of his cash reserves each year to rats eating money stored in warehouses and water damage in hidden stashes. Losing hundreds of millions of dollars to rats was simply the cost of doing business. Pablo used his wealth strategically. He built housing for poor families in Medellin, earning him the nickname Robin Hood Paisa among some locals. He constructed soccer fields and sponsored youth teams. He distributed money in slums, creating a base of support among Medellin's poorest residents who saw him as a benefactor, not a criminal. He also used his money to corrupt the Colombian government at every level. Police officers, judges, military officers, politicians, everyone had a price, and Pablo was willing to pay it. Those who couldn't be bought faced a simple choice: plata o plomo, silver or lead, accept the bribe or take the bullet. Pablo entered politics himself in 1982, winning election to Colombia's Chamber of Representatives as an alternate member. He tried to use his political position to gain legitimacy and legal protection. He posed as a successful businessman and philanthropist, someone who'd earned his wealth through legitimate means and was now giving back to his community. But Pablo's political ambitions were undermined by his own arrogance and by enemies who knew the truth about his empire. Minister of Justice Rodrigo Lara Bonilla publicly denounced Pablo as a criminal and drug trafficker. Despite Pablo's attempts to silence him through bribes and threats, Lara Bonilla continued his crusade. On April 30th, 1984, two hitmen on a motorcycle pulled alongside Lara Bonilla's car in Bogotá and shot him to death. The assassination of a sitting cabinet minister shocked Colombia and the world. It marked a turning point. Pablo Escobar had declared war on the Colombian state. In the mid-1980s, Pablo Escobar was at the height of his power. His Medellin cartel controlled approximately 80% of the cocaine shipped to the United States. The numbers were staggering. The cartel was smuggling 15 tons of cocaine into the United States every day. That's over 5,000 tons per year. The profits were equally staggering. Pablo's personal fortune was estimated at $30 billion, making him one of the richest men on Earth. Forbes magazine listed him among the world's wealthiest individual for 7 consecutive years. He owned hundreds of properties across Colombia and other countries: ranches, apartments, mansions, estates. His main residence, Hacienda Naples, was a sprawling ranch covering over 7,000 acres, complete with a private zoo featuring hippos, elephants, and exotic animals from around the world. But maintaining this empire required constant violence. Pablo employed an army of sicarios, young hitmen recruited from Medellin's slums. These teenagers and young men were fiercely loyal to Pablo, viewing him as a patron who'd given them money, purpose, and respect. They killed without hesitation or remorse, carrying out hundreds of assassinations on Pablo's orders. The violence wasn't limited to rival traffickers or uncooperative officials. Pablo targeted journalists who reported on his crimes, police officers who investigated him, judges who refused to be corrupted, and politicians who opposed him. Between 1984 and 1993, the Medellin cartel killed over 4,000 people, including hundreds of police officers, judges, journalists, and innocent civilians caught in crossfire. The Colombian government, under enormous pressure from the United States, began fighting back. After the assassination of Justice Minister Lara Bonilla, President Belisario Betancur authorized extradition of Colombian drug traffickers to the United States. This was Pablo's nightmare. In Colombia, he could bribe or kill judges and witnesses. In the United States, he would face a justice system he couldn't corrupt or intimidate. Pablo launched a terror campaign to force the Colombian government to abandon extradition. The campaign included bombings of government buildings, assassinations of judges and politicians who supported extradition, and attacks on civilians to create fear and chaos. On November 6, 1985, members of the M19 guerrilla group, allegedly financed by Pablo, stormed Colombia's Palace of Justice in Bogotá. The siege lasted 28 hours and ended with the building in flames. 11 Supreme Court justices were killed, along with over 100 others. Files related to extradition cases against Pablo and other traffickers were destroyed in the fire. In 1989, Pablo's terror campaign reached new heights. On August 18, Luis Carlos Galán, a presidential candidate who'd vowed to pursue extradition and fight the cartels, was assassinated at a campaign rally. The killing shocked Colombia and demonstrated that no one, no matter how powerful or protected, was safe from Pablo's reach. Then came the bombing of Avianca Flight 203. On November 27, 1989, a commercial airliner exploded mid-flight, killing all 107 people on board. The bomb had been planted by Pablo's men, targeting an informant who was supposed to be on the flight. The informant had changed his plans at the last minute, but Pablo ordered the bombing anyway. 107 innocent people died for nothing. Less than a week later, on December 6, 1989, a truck bomb exploded outside the DAS, Colombian Intelligence Agency, headquarters in Bogotá, killing 63 people and injuring hundreds more. The explosion destroyed an entire city block. Pablo's message was clear. He would kill anyone, destroy anything, and terrorize an entire nation to protect himself and his empire. The Colombian government faced a choice: surrender to a drug lord or fight a war that was tearing the country apart. Meanwhile, the United States had become deeply involved. The Drug Enforcement Administration had been tracking Pablo since the late 1970s. The FBI was investigating money laundering operations. U.S. intelligence agencies were providing support to Colombian authorities, and the U.S. government was pushing hard for Pablo's extradition. In 1989, President George H.W. Bush declared drug trafficking a national security threat and increased American support for Colombia's fight against the cartels. U.S. military advisors, intelligence operatives, and DEA agents poured into Colombia. Special operations units trained Colombian forces in counter-narcotics operations. Satellite surveillance and wiretapping technology were deployed to track Pablo and his associates. Pablo found himself fighting multiple enemies: the Colombian government, the U.S. government, rival cartels, particularly the Cali cartel, which had its own ambitions to dominate the cocaine trade, paramilitary groups, and a vigilante organization called Los Peps, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, which was systematically killing Pablo's associates and destroying his properties. The pressure was immense. Pablo's empire was under siege from all sides, but he still had billions of dollars, thousands of loyal followers, and a willingness to kill anyone who threatened him. The war would continue, bloodier than ever. By 1991, Pablo Escobar was desperate. Despite his wealth and power, he was losing the war. The Colombian government, backed by the United States, was hunting him relentlessly. His allies were being killed or arrested. His money and properties were being seized. Even his family was in danger. Pablo made an extraordinary decision. He would surrender. But not to just anyone, and not under just any conditions. Pablo negotiated directly with the Colombian government, making demands that seemed absurd, but that the government, exhausted by years of violence, actually considered. Pablo's conditions: He would turn himself in, but only if the government agreed to three things. First, extradition to the United States must be permanently banned in Colombia's constitution. Second, he would serve his sentence in a prison of his own design. Third, his family would receive complete protection and immunity from prosecution. Incredibly, the Colombian government agreed. On June 19, 1991, Pablo Escobar surrendered to authorities and was taken to La Catedral, the prison he'd built for himself on a hillside overlooking Medellin. Calling La Catedral a prison was generous. It was more like a luxury resort with guards. The facility included a soccer field, a bar, a jacuzzi, a waterfall, and comfortable living quarters with telephones and fax machines. Pablo continued running his drug empire from inside, conducting business meetings, ordering murders, and living in comfort while technically serving a sentence for drug trafficking. But Pablo's arrogance would be his undoing. In July 1992, two members of a rival faction were brought to La Catedral. Fernando El Negro Gilano and Gerardo Kiko Moncada had allegedly been stealing from Pablo. They were tortured and killed inside the prison, their bodies buried on the grounds. When news of the murders leaked, the Colombian government realized they'd been made fools. Pablo wasn't imprisoned, he was protected. The government decided to transfer Pablo to a real prison. On July 22, 1992, military forces surrounded La Catedral to take Pablo into custody. But Pablo had been warned. He and several associates walked out of the prison and simply disappeared into the mountains surrounding Medellin. Pablo Escobar was on the run. The most wanted criminal in the world was hiding somewhere in Colombia, and the largest manhunt in history was about to begin. The Search Block, a specialized Colombian police unit supported by U.S. intelligence and military advisors, was tasked with finding Pablo. They used every tool available: electronic surveillance, informants, raids, interrogations. American technology, including satellite tracking and signal intelligence, helped narrow the search. But finding one man hiding in a city of millions, protected by loyal supporters and family, was extraordinarily difficult. Pablo moved constantly, never staying in the same place for more than a few days. He communicated through encrypted radios and trusted couriers. He had safe houses throughout Medellin and supporters who would hide him without question. Meanwhile, Los Peps, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, continued their campaign of terror against Pablo's organization. This vigilante group, which included rivals from the Cali cartel, former associates who'd turned against Pablo, and possibly Colombian security forces operating outside the law, systematically killed Pablo's lawyers, accountants, family members, and associates. They burned his properties, seized his assets, and sent a clear message: anyone who helped Pablo would die. The creation and operations of Los Peps remain controversial. Evidence suggests that some Colombian police and possibly American advisors provided intelligence to the group, effectively using illegal death squads to accomplish what legal means couldn't. The moral and legal questions raised by this collaboration are troubling, but in the desperate war against Pablo, rules and ethics were often abandoned. As 1993 progressed, the net closed around Pablo. His organization was in tatters. His fortune was depleted by seizures and the costs of hiding. His family had fled to Germany, seeking asylum, though they were later denied entry and returned to Colombia. Pablo was isolated, paranoid, and running out of options. The search block used electronic surveillance to track Pablo's movements. Every time he used a radio or phone, they could triangulate his position. The technology became more sophisticated, the tracking more precise. Pablo knew he was being hunted this way, but he couldn't maintain command of what remained of his organization without communication. In late November 1993, Intelligence indicated Pablo was hiding in the Los Olivos neighborhood of Medellin. Surveillance teams moved into position. Colombian National Police surrounded potential safe houses. DEA agents and American intelligence operatives monitored from a nearby base. On December 2, 1993, Pablo's 44th birthday, he made a fatal mistake. He called his family in Bogotá, talking for several minutes. That was long enough. The search block traced the call to a specific address in Los Olivos. December 2, 1993, 2 p.m. Los Olivos, Medellin. The house at Carrera 79B, number 45D, 72. Hundreds of Colombian National Police officers converged on the location. American DEA agents watched from a surveillance position nearby, coordinating with Colombian commanders. This was it. After 16 months of hunting, after years of war, they'd found Pablo Escobar. The house was surrounded. Officers moved into position, weapons ready. A few minutes after 2 p.m., they stormed the building. Inside were Pablo Escobar and his bodyguard, Alvaro de Jesus Agudelo, known as El Limón. As police entered the building, Pablo and El Limón opened fire. A fierce gun battle erupted. Pablo knew he couldn't win this fight. His only hope was escape. Barefoot, he ran for the back of the house, trying to reach the roof. El Limón followed, providing covering fire. They made it to the roof. Pablo, overweight and out of shape from months of hiding and stress, struggled to run across the clay tiles. Police snipers and officers were everywhere, on rooftops, in windows, on the ground below. Shots rang out. El Limón was hit and fell. Pablo kept running, but he was hit too. Multiple bullets struck him, one entering behind his ear. He collapsed on the roof, blood pooling around him. Colombian police rushed to the body. The man who'd terrorized Colombia for over a decade, who'd killed thousands, who'd built a $30 billion empire, was dead at age 44. Photos of Pablo's body were taken immediately and distributed to media worldwide. The Colombian government wanted absolute proof that the king of cocaine was dead. The images showed Pablo lying on the rooftop, his eyes open, blood on his face, clearly deceased. It was a grim end to a violent life. The exact details of Pablo's death remain disputed. Official reports state he was killed during the shootout with police. But some investigators and journalists have suggested Pablo might have shot himself, or that he was executed by police after being wounded. The autopsy showed the fatal bullet entered behind his right ear, consistent with a self-inflicted wound or a point-blank execution. Whatever the exact circumstances, the result was the same. Pablo Escobar was dead, and his empire died with him. Within hours, celebrations erupted in Bogotá and Medellin. People who'd lived in fear for years danced in the streets. Police officers who'd lost colleagues to Pablo's violence rejoiced. The Colombian government declared a victory in the war against the cartels, but the reality was more complicated. Yes, Pablo was dead, but the cocaine trade didn't end. Other cartels, particularly the Cali cartel, simply took over much of the Medellin cartel's operations. The violence decreased, but drug trafficking continued. Pablo's family faced a difficult future. His wife, Maria Victoria Henao, and his children, Juan Pablo and Manuela, fled Colombia and eventually settled in Argentina under assumed names. They lived quietly, trying to escape Pablo's shadow. Juan Pablo, now known as Sebastián Mariquin, eventually wrote a book about his father, condemning Pablo's violence while trying to understand the man behind the monster. Pablo's mother, Hermelda, maintained until her death in 2006 that her son was a good man driven to violence by circumstances. She claimed he'd only wanted to help the poor, and that the government and Americans had made him into a criminal. The legacy of Pablo Escobar is complex and controversial. In some parts of Medellin, he's still viewed as a Robin Hood figure, someone who helped the poor when the government wouldn't. Murals and shrines to Pablo can still be found in neighborhoods he once supported financially. Some locals refuse to condemn him, remembering the housing and soccer fields he built more than the violence he caused. But to most Colombians, to the families of his victims, to the police officers who hunted him and the judges he terrorized, Pablo Escobar was a monster. He killed over 4,000 people. He bombed buildings and airplanes. He terrorized an entire nation. He corrupted democracy and damaged Colombia's institutions in ways that took decades to repair. The cocaine trade that Pablo helped build continues to this day. Current estimates suggest that Colombia still produces over 70% of the world's cocaine. New cartels and trafficking organizations have filled the void left by Pablo's death. The billions of dollars Americans spend on cocaine each year continue to fuel violence and corruption in Latin America. Pablo Escobar has been dead for over 30 years, but his story continues to fascinate the world. Books, documentaries, television series, and films have been made about his life. Netflix's Narcos introduced a new generation to the story of the king of cocaine. Tour of his former properties, including the ruins of Hacienda Naples, attract thousands of tourists each year. This fascination is troubling to many Colombians who lived through the violence of Pablo's era. They see the glorification of a mass murderer, the romanticization of a terrorist, the transformation of a monster into an anti-hero. It's painful to watch the world become entertained by a story that cost thousands of Colombian lives. But there are lessons in Pablo's story. Lessons about the dangers of the drug trade, about the corruption that vast amounts of illegal money can create, about the consequences of America's insatiable appetite for cocaine. Pablo Escobar proved that enough money can corrupt almost anyone. He bought police officers, judges, politicians, and military officers. He showed that in a society with vast inequality and poverty, a criminal willing to share wealth can build genuine popular support, even while committing horrific crimes. He also proved that criminal organizations, no matter how wealthy or powerful, can be defeated. It took years, enormous resources, international cooperation, and controversial tactics, but Pablo was eventually brought down. His death demonstrated that no criminal is invincible, no empire is permanent. The hippos Pablo imported to Hacienda Naples still live in Colombia, their population growing in rivers and wetlands where they have no natural predators. They're an invasive species causing environmental problems, a strange living legacy of a dead drug lord. In a way, they symbolize Pablo's entire legacy, something exotic and attention-grabbing that causes damage long after he's gone. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria died on a rooftop in Medellin on December 2, 1993. He was 44 years old. At the height of his power, he'd been worth $30 billion, controlled an empire that spanned continents, and had the power to challenge governments. But in the end, he died barefoot on the run, his empire destroyed, his family in exile, killed by the very violence he'd used to build his empire. The billions were gone. The power was gone. All that remained was a body on a rooftop and a legacy of death. The king of cocaine had fallen, and the world, despite its continued fascination with his story, was better for it.